Welcome once again to Draft Day Live on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast. The draft is over. The first round took 4 hours. Rounds 2 through 7 took 4 minutes.
Yeah.
That was a fast-moving day. We are digesting our Palace Grill lunch. I'm Jay Zawaski with Greg Boysen and Mario Tirabassi. And as always, we're presented by PointsBet. Use that promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. Before we continue, want to thank everybody
the Palace Grill
who joined us during our live podcasts on Thursday night for the first round, this morning for rounds 2 through 4. Basically, we were going to do 2 through 3, and it went so fast we did 2 through 4. And now we're going to tie a bow on the whole thing. And fellas, I know this is maybe the first actual podcast people are going to listen to because we did not publish the draft shows. Mm-hmm. So we should start where the festivities started with the Alex DeBrincat trade. Traded to Ottawa for it wasn't what everybody thought it was going to be, right? It probably wasn't the total return that everyone was hoping for. 7th overall, 39th overall, and a 2024 third-round pick. And when this news crossed, I think the three of us kind of said, oh, that's it? Mm-hmm. That's really all they're getting for Alex DeBrincat? We were told franchise ruiner. We were told multiple picks, multiple prospects, multiple firsts, and it just didn't turn out to be that. So let's start there. The initial shock of the DeBrincat trade. You walked in, Mario, and said, let's have a great show, and slammed a 6-pack of beer down on the table. Greg was the voice of reason, which I appreciated because I needed him in that moment.
You know, this shit has hit the fan when I'm the voice of reason.
Yes, I was not expecting that.
We're in a very dark place.
We were in a very weird place.
You know, guys, it's not so bad. So, yeah.
I was about 24 hours
I was happy to do that. It obviously underwhelming. Obviously, we've valued Alex DeBrincat much higher than the rest of the league did, but apparently, and it makes a lot of sense, everybody is pretty much convinced he's going to want to be a UFA after the end of this season. He's going to not take his qualifying offer, and nobody wanted to give up the farm for a guy that most likely is going to test the open market after a season. So that hurt the trade value. A lot of people were scared off, thinking I'm not going to give you 2 first-round picks and a top prospect for a guy I'm going to have for 1 year.
Right.
So maybe those teams that were interested in trading him are now going to sit and go, okay, once he says I don't want to be a Senator anymore, then we'll try and get him as a free agent, where all we have to do is give him cap space.
Yeah, and I think once the initial rage wore off from all of us, because we got the news as we were leaving home to come here.
I literally got in the car, turned it on, and I checked my phone right before I left, and I saw the eyeballs emoji from the Blackhawks, and I was like, "Are you serious?
Yeah,
right now, literally."
Yeah, I was getting ready to leave too, and when I saw that, I was like, "Well, I'm going to stand pat here for a few minutes and not head to door." Not as far of a commute as Mario, so I had the luxury of being able to hang on for another 20 minutes, and it was kind of like, okay. You know, the car ride in was a little, I wasn't paying attention to whatever podcast I had on very much because it was kind of like, what the hell is going on here? Then I was thinking maybe they'll take that 7 pick and then package that to get that number 2 overall.
Right.
And then I was like, well, let's see this can't be the only move. Mm-hmm. This can't be it. And it turned out it wasn't. It was the first of 3.
It was the first of many. But a little bit more on DeBrincat before we move past it. Your point is correct, Greg. Clearly, Alex DeBrincat is going to test the free agency waters, as he should.
Absolutely. Get that money, son.
As he absolutely should. He should let every team in the league potentially bid on his services and see what he wants to, play for. $9 million is a qualifying offer. He's going to make more than $9 million.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And what part of Ottawa makes you think that Alex DeBrincat's going to say, yeah, I want to finish my career here. I want to play the best years of my career in Ottawa? There's no way that's happening.
Cannot imagine that's going to be the scenario.
They've got some nice young players coming, but there's not. I don't look at them as a future world beater. I don't look at them the way I looked at the Colorado Avalanche 2-3 years ago.
They have a really good set of young players coming up.
They do.
They do. It's just
It's
hard
Ottawa.
to trust the Senators organization to
How
make
many
it
years
work.
have we been saying they got good players coming up? How many years have we been saying the Buffalo Sabres have some nice talent to come up, and they're still in last place every year? So yeah, it's not.
It's still.
I've never
the
been to
team-
Ottawa. I imagine it's a beautiful city. It's the capital of Canada. You usually don't make your country's capital in a dump. Usually,
Right.
so
State capital sometimes.
still definitely state capitals, but not country capitals. I'm sure it's a great town. I'm sure it's got nice restaurants. Marian Hossa loved Ottawa, still loves Ottawa. He talks fondly of it. So I'm sure the people of Ottawa are wonderful citizens. They use their left and right turn signal indicators.
I believe we learned that Kyle Davidson is from Ottawa.
Yeah, see, you can't
Luke
be that
Richardson
bad.
is from Ottawa, so
So
be
it-
careful. Be careful what you say.
No, I have nothing against the city itself of Ottawa. I've never been there, so I have nothing to judge on. But I wouldn't want to play there. I wouldn't want to be a superstar player in Ottawa.
No.
No, I don't want to be that.
I mean, DeBrincat could be the big superstar that goes to Ottawa that turns them into a team potentially on the cusp of contending, and then next season they go big. That could be a best case scenario for him, but unless he is blown away by the development of those young players and they have a great season and he's sold on the future of the Senators, yeah, I don't see a situation in which he doesn't say, let me test that free agency market.
I wouldn't sign a long-term deal with a team that thought it'd be a good idea to hire Pierre Maguire.
It's true.
That is a phenomenal point. That is the
would-
best
True.
point made in the last 2 days.
At least they came to their senses real quick and said,
Yeah,
put him back in the
I'm
booth.
tired of learning about where this kid went to high school.
Put him back
Get the
in the
hell out of
booth.
here, Pierre. And Chucko Mucko, our guy, says, makes you wonder why they didn't hang on to the deadline for a bigger haul. Because he'd help them win too many games.
That's the other thing.
We want Connor Bedard, Alex DeBrincat scoring 35 goals between now and the trade deadline. Counteractive to that. You don't want to win any games this year.
And we were talking about it before the show, in between shows, and just looking at the lineup as it is currently constructed and kind of looking at who are free agents that they might bring in, who are restricted free agents on the scrap heap that might be take some flyers, and honestly, realistic moves that the Blackhawks could make to shore up their lineup which it's currently constructed now. That is a Connor Bedardian lineup right now.
Yeah, it's
Like,
not
it
good.
is.
I'm not telling the Blackhawks store to start printing up those jerseys, but they should at least have the template.
Make sure you're stocked up. They probably are, but
At least research what number he wore
stock,
in juniors.
yes,
Make sure you
stock
have those
up on
numbers
your
in stock.
on your 9s and 8s
Yeah.
in the in the jersey department. That's for sure. They probably have a lot, but you know.
Yeah, just make sure you have enough, because if this plan comes to fruition and is clearly obvious that is what is going on here, that jersey will sell a lot of jerseys.
The other reason you don't wait until the trade deadline is you got 3 picks in this year's draft, and that begins to rebuild. If you wait until next year to acquire those picks, you're not going to be able to do that. All you would have had would be number 16 with the Doc trade this year in the
13,
first round. 13 13 this
And
year
then
in the Doc
25.
trade. Yeah, and it's just not. Yeah, and Mrazek, but the Mrazek deal, but it's just, you got 3 picks for Alex DeBrincat, and the rebuild is officially underway. It's I know it is really painful to see your best players go, and especially to have at the moment nothing to show for it on the ice. It
Right.
really sucks. It's really painful, but I think we need to be careful of falling into the trap of Kyle Davidson sucks. He will forever suck because he didn't get a prospect from Ottawa. Because Lassie Thompson was not included in the Alex DeBrincat trade.
Well, listen,
Right.
when Connor Bedard is getting the Conn Smythe Trophy at Center Ice United Center in 2027, nobody's going to care about that prospect. Nobody's going to care about Alex DeBrincat anymore at that point. That's the idea here.
Right. But I do fall back on the fact that you can still make that trade and still get a prospect.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You're
So-
not wrong.
100%.
You're not
But,
wrong.
but Kyle Davidson said it
didn't.
yesterday that they discussed a prospect as well, but he didn't push too hard because he liked that second-round pick too. He thought the value of the second-round pick this year was more valuable than any prospect that Ottawa would be willing to give up. Look, Ottawa's not going to give you Jake Sanderson. It's not happening.
Right.
There's no shot in hell that's happening. So throw that out the window. Then you start to look at some of the other prospects. They're nice, but you could see what Davidson is saying is, look, we've got a guy we think is going to be there. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But, that's what he said. He justified it. So, okay. Fine.
What exactly? I know they changed the lottery rules, and it could change again between now and then. What are the rules where if you're the worst record, what's the farthest you can drop? You can only drop to like third.
If you have the worst record, you can only
drop 2 spots.
You can only drop a maximum of 2 spots
So
now.
if you finish with the worst record, you are guaranteed
like
top
NBA.
3.
Yeah.
NBA, you could go to 4 if I'm not mistaken.
I
think
believe in
No,
the NHL.
the NHL changed it because it was if you had the top overall pick or best odds at the top overall pick, meaning you had the worst record, you could fall to 5th. I think it was at one point, but now it's the lowest you can go is 3rd. I believe.
So you finish with the worst record in the league, and they are definitely heading
Or
in
in
that
the
direction.
conversation, yes.
You're at the very worst getting 3rd, which means you're either getting Michkov or Fantilli. You know what I meant.
Fantilli.
The Fratellis?
Yeah. Fantilli.
I did that show
Sorry.
already.
This is our 9th hour on the air in the last 18. My brain is goo. So yeah, at the very worst, I know people are like, well, you don't guarantee yourself a first. No, you don't. But you have to take that chance. You have to play that game. And if you're gonna be bad enough that you guaranteed you don't pick higher, you don't pick any lower than 3rd, and next year's draft, the top 3 are all franchise altering type players. Okay, so you don't get Bedard, so you get Michkov instead. Which again, yes, there's risks there with the whole Russia stuff.
Yeah.
But you're setting yourself up to get a generational player.
Brad in the chat says the Hawks only won 28 games this year with Fleury. How many games do you think they would have won without him? And they had DeBrincat. Right. Mm-hmm. But again, if DeBrincat's heart is set on testing the UFA market, he's not going to re-sign in Chicago for a rebuild. That's not going to happen. And now you have 3 pieces that will be here in the future that you wouldn't have had if you didn't trade him, right? It's really hard to say. You're looking at, well, Alex DeBrincat scores 40 goals and he's great, and they sucked with him. All those things are true. But again, you're looking at losing him regardless in 2 years, right? And then what? Right, and if you wait till the deadline, yeah, maybe some team goes crazy and gives you a first-round pick or 2, but the teams at the deadline that are going to be bidding for Alex DeBrincat aren't picking at the top of the draft.
Right.
You're not getting a top 10 pick at the deadline. You might get multiples. You might do something like a Brandon Hagel trade, but that's not the sort of thing that's going to get you back to where the Hawks were in the early and mid 2010s.
Because the guys that are going to make a deal for Alex DeBrincat at the deadline aren't picking 7th in the draft.
Right.
They're picking
You're looking
25th,
at Tampa
26th.
and Colorado and those
exactly.
teams that are going to be at the bottom of the first round. So
Yeah.
you've got to and I'm guilty of this too. Last night I was pissed, but you've got to see it through. You've got to zoom out and look at it from the whole perspective of it. Are they going to be able to resign him? They apparently think not. Mm-hmm. Kyle Davidson talks to the agent. They know what the player's thinking. Yeah. Just because Alex DeBrincat wasn't the ones last year, like Jonathan Taves and to a lesser extent Patrick Kane, to express some frustration with the direction, doesn't mean he wasn't feeling that way. Right. Maybe he was just a little more professional about it and saying, hey, look.
Much better poker face.
I'm just telling you, this is great, and I'll be here and be happy to be a Blackhawk until my contract's up, but I have no interest in being part of this long term. Yeah. Okay. And other GMs know that too. Because guess what? Alex DeBrincat's agent has players on Ottawa and Philly and New Jersey and everybody else you're talking to. There's not really a lot of secrets when it comes to between the leaders of franchises. Yeah. People know how things are going.
For all we know, Kyle Davidson reached out to us and everyone going, hey, do you want to sit down some point this summer and talk contract extension? No, we're not interested in that right now. Okay, we're going to trade you.
I'm good.
Yeah. Okay. They're not interested in talking about extending him, so we're going to get what we can for him now and move on. And not an easy decision, but when you're looking to start over, you start over.
Yep. And that's what they did. All right, we should actually discuss the picks they made. Reminder, we will be joined at 3:40 by Blackhawks television analyst Colby Cohen. He's got, remember, not only does he cover the Blackhawks, he covers NCAA hockey. He's got a feel for a lot of these prospects, so we're going to pick his brain. But before we do that, we're going to tell you about our friends at PointsBet and, of course, our friends at Strava. If you enjoy CHGO, one way to help us continue to grow is to download the PointsBet app and use the code CHGO when you sign up. Not only will you get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000, but you'll also, if you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you're going to get that free CHGO membership, access to all of our great web content, and a free t-shirt of your choice from the CHGO locker like mine right here. I got mine on. I've been wearing it all day, and it's not sweaty, unlike last night. Any questions, email us, pointsbet@allchgo.com, and we'll get you squared away. And in case you missed it, online sign-up is available in Illinois. Get your phone out, download the app, use the code CHGO. You're ready to go in minutes. It's awesome. It is the fastest sports book, and you'll download it easier than ever so you can start living your bet life in seconds. So what are you waiting for? Once the game starts, don't just bet. Live your bet life with PointsBet. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
Well, while Kyle Davidson and his scouting staff were hoping they filled the Blackhawks pipeline full of game changers, you can fill your coffee pot every morning with a game changer, and that is CBD, Strava CBD craft coffee. It's a game changer, and it's helped thousands of people to improve their overall wellness and quality of life, including many of your favorite CHGO personalities. Strava delivers delicious, fresh roasted specialty coffee infused with organic broad-spectrum CBD. The CBD from hemp doesn't make you high or hungry, but it does offer you some real benefits, such as feeling more alert and focused without all the jitters. You're going to live your day more balanced with less anxiety and fewer aches and pains. Plus, including CBD in your daily routine can also help you enjoy a more restful night's sleep so you wake up feeling your best, ready to brew yourself another pot of Strava craft coffee. Strava is all about quality. Everything is small batch. It's fresh. It's shipped straight to your door. They got a wide variety of flavors, of CBD concentration levels. You can get it whole bean, ground, K-cups, whatever your preference is. They will take care of it for you. Plus, CHGO listeners can save 25% off their entire order by using the promo code CHGO25 at checkout. That is 25% off your purchase at Strava, STRAVA, craftcoffee.com by using that promo code CHGO and the numbers 25 when you check out. And if you already love Strava, you can join the Strava Coffee Club. Subscribe and save. When you're a member of the Coffee Club, you are in total control. Pick all your favorite flavors. Tell Strava where you want it sent to, when you want it. And guess what?
Tell them where to stick it.
It's
on my porch, please. Thank you.
It shows up exactly when and where you want it. It's beautiful.
One more thing on the DeBrincat thing. John Fife in the chat says, I want to know what team Friedman was talking about, Elliot Friedman, that offered 2 firsts, one of them pretty high. Don't know. We don't know. And remember, we said this last night, but in case you missed the last 6 hours of our programming, people put stuff out, right? Kyle Davidson could have texted, we got an offer, 2 first-round picks. That's just being a savvy GM, right? You're trying to drum up, so Ottawa comes to you and they're like, we can't give you 2, but what about this? And, okay, fine. You're trying to drum up the value of your asset. So who knows? Maybe that team, something fell. We were just reading that the Devils wanted Slafkovsky. That was their guy. And then when Montreal took him first, the Devils were like, we're out of time. We can't possibly trade out of this now. No. A savvy GM would have a plan. We talked about this coming into the draft this week, saying, look, maybe the Devils are willing to part with the number 2 overall pick if their pick is taken before they pick. The Devils should have had that deal worked out. Say, hey, Team X, we want Slafkovsky. If he's on the board, deal's off. But if he gets taken first, we got a deal.
Right.
That's easy to do. You got to have that ready to go. You don't make the decision when the pick's made. You've got to have scenario A, B, C, D, E when you're picking that high in the draft. So it's not just Chicago that has some incompetent moves happening at the draft. It happens to everybody. It's just
everyone's susceptible to it.
Doesn't make it easier. All right, let's get into the picks here. With the 7th pick, the one acquired from the Ottawa Senators, nice Polish kid, defenseman Kevin Korchinski from the Seattle Thunderbirds, 67 games, 4 goals, 61 assists, 65 points. He's 6'2", 185, and shoots left. And this is really, as we discuss this entire draft, you're really seeing what Kyle Davidson is prioritizing.
Mm-hmm.
Speed, size occasionally, and compete level.
Mm-hmm.
Korchinski checks all of those boxes for the Hawks.
Big thing in this year's draft class is speed, tempo of their game, compete level, like you said. With the defensemen, it was size and mobility. With the forwards, it was very much just the north-south speed factor to their game. And every pick they took checked those boxes. And Korchinski, he sounds like a pretty solid defenseman. Big, mobile, likes to join the rush, needs to work on his game, his own defensive game. But I mean, that's something that we've seen before. That's something we've seen develop before. He compared himself to modeling his game a little bit after Shea Weber. That's not Shea Theodore. Either one of them, not so bad.
Either way, yeah, I'm good.
But yeah, Shea Theodore. So yeah, I think that's might have been a little bit early in the first round to get him, but in the next pick that the Blackhawks made, they made up for it by getting a player who may have fallen a few spots there with the 13th overall pick.
This definitely is a guy that they targeted heading into the draft.
They
wanted him, and they went and got him, and then we move on to 13. A pick that made us happy.
A pick that was acquired for, we didn't really touch on it too much, but acquired for Kirby Dach.
Kirby Dach, yep.
The Kirby Dach trade happening before the Blackhawks made their 7th pick.
Yes.
So it was we went on air knowing that they had at least acquired the 7th overall pick. We didn't know that it was going to be the first of 3 picks that they would have in the first round, but the 13th overall pick for Kirby Dach. They also got the 66th overall pick, which was early in the 3rd round, both from the Montreal Canadiens. So Kirby Dach is now going to, as in his own words, probably benefit from a change of scenery. I don't think he's lying. I think that's definitely something that he could and probably will benefit from. At the same time, Montreal is a very difficult market if you are not performing up to standards.
Lower expectations will help a little bit. They didn't pick him 3rd. They traded 13 for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yes, there will be pressure, but they've got Slavkovsky to worry about. They passed on Shane Wright. That's going to be analyzed for years and years to come. Shane Wright fell to 4, by the way, ended up in Seattle. So Dach is traded for the 13th pick. And we started getting rumblings last week that was this week, I guess, that Dach was on the table, and we're like, well, I don't know what you'd get from him at this point.
Yesterday.
You got a top 15 pick for him, plus pretty surprising. So the pick is Frank Nazar. Is that what we're calling it? Nazar?
Frank Nazar from the U.S. Development
Frank Nazar
Program.
the 3rd.
I'm going to call him Nazer.
Frankie Tree.
That Nazer guy.
Frank
My
the
Frank.
Tank.
24 games played, 15 goals, 20 assists, 35 points. He's 5'11", 181, a right-handed shot, real good skater.
Many scouts and draft analysts calling Frank Nazar the fastest skater in this draft class. So the Blackhawks wanted speed and compete level. They got exactly that in Frank Nazar, and a player that can play both on the wing and center. Started as a wing in his junior career, moved to center, and I was listening to the Blackhawks Talk podcast on the way in here with our friends James DeVoe, Charlie Romeliotis, and Pat Boyle. They had a quote from Frank Nazar about him transitioning to center early in his junior career, and Nazar said, well, they said, how was the transition from wing to center? He said, well, my first game as a centerman, I had 5 points and was a +6, so it's been pretty good since then. So that would be great if he could continue to develop and excel at center position. That would be fantastic. If the future of the center position in the Blackhawks organization is Lucas Reichel and Frank Nazar, it's a good place to start.
Yes, I would say that without even seeing Frank Nazar play a professional hockey game, they have upgraded from Kirby Dach. I'm already going to make that.
All right,
interesting.
Because as far as centers go, Kirby, I want Kirby to do good, but I'm glad that he's not our problem anymore. Not that he was a problem, but you know.
I know what you mean. Yeah,
we don't have to bang our heads against the table about his 33% win percentage at the faceoff.
So Nazar is fast, really, really fast, and he plays fast. You could be a speedy guy and still not play fast. He's got both.
Right.
Elite prospects scouting poll. They had a poll from various scouts from across the league, and he finished first in the entire draft class as far as having the highest ceiling. So that's impressive. A lot of scouting reports.
To hear that.
A lot of scouting reports to make it. I don't like making comparisons to current players, but that's what scouting reports are there for. The name Braden Point comes up a lot when you talk about Frank Nazar.
That'll work.
Getting him at 13. I wanted him at 7.
We all did.
That's why I was
excited.
when he came in at 13. That's why we have that GIF reaction of us.
Like Mario.
That is no slight to Kevin Korchinski. We are just as excited about your future with the organization.
Yeah, I think we probably would have flipped those two.
We flipped the two. We would have been just as happy.
So, by the way, we're gonna get a cleaner version of that GIF, and that's gonna become the CHGO Blackhawks win GIF. We're going to throw it up there of us celebrating. So
there you go.
You'll get to see it 6 times this upcoming season. And be on the lookout for that.
Hopefully.
Maybe.
All right, and then just when you thought Kyle Davidson was done, he pulls off the trade that we've been saying the Hawks should make for months.
Yes.
Long time.
Peter Mrazek.
Trading for Peter Mrazek. They get the 25th overall pick and Peter Mrazek. What was the trade that went back to Toronto?
The 38th overall pick.
38th overall.
So they moved up 13 spots to take on the Peter Mrazek contract. 2 more seasons at $3.6 million. Toronto definitely needed to clear that space. Blackhawks can take on all the salary they want at this point. Unfortunately, as we mentioned at the end of the last show, they'll be taking on the Duncan Keith stupid recapture thing. But whatever, that doesn't matter right now for the Hawks. So Mrazek.
I wish we didn't have so much to talk about.
Right.
So that we could give Duncan Keith retiring a proper send-off.
Yeah, seriously.
It's a footnote. It's like, he retired.
There's plenty of shows
when we
between now and
all right, let's commit to it right now. The first Throwback Thursday episode we get back, it won't be this next week because we brought prospect camp. So 2 weeks from yesterday, Throwback Thursday, Duncan Keith.
Be the official Duncan Keith send-off.
The Duncan Keith appreciation episode, because Lord knows he deserves it. So, but Mrazek, an NHL caliber goaltender when healthy.
You have your starter.
And you needed that, and it made sense for both sides. We've been talking about that since the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Take on that contract and get a pick from them, and they did that, and then they drafted another defenseman.
Sam Renzel is the pick from the Waterloo Blackhawks of the USHL. 21 games played, 2 goals, 8 assists, 10 points, 6'2", 181 right-handed shot.
Played also in the Minnesota high school ranks, which is a pretty good place to play as a American player. He is going to the University of Minnesota, not this upcoming season, but the next season. And he's more of a project defenseman, but the Blackhawks have time to develop players now because we are looking at a longer timeline in the rebuilding plans. Patience. Can't preach it enough. I know towards the end of last season, some players were thinking, maybe the rebuild won't take too long. Nope, it's going to take a while.
Yes.
The long-term plan is a long-term plan. I think our producer Kevin asked us last night when we finished the draft show, so how many years is it going to take? 3, 4? And I said 5 at least.
Yeah.
I think
5.
in 4 years, if everything goes right in 4 years, we can squint and say maybe a wild card, or at least compete for it until March.
I think Jay said in 4 years you might see the 2007-2008 Blackhawks again.
Now, if they get Bedard, that
takes a year.
Might be a little faster.
Might be a little faster.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think even getting Bedard suddenly accelerates your free agency plans.
People are
and
going to
your
want to come here.
Yeah, you're going to be, okay, Bedard's here. We've got a nice core of young players.
Bedard will sell
Now
tickets.
let's sign some free agents to bring in and complement Bedard.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But we got to get there first. It's got to happen first. I loved the pick. Sam Renzel's dad is in the crowd with him at the draft. And I don't know if Sam's dad has ever watched a draft before, but they do call your son's name. And he went, holy shit. It was like clearly on TV. And I don't know, maybe Sam was probably picked a little earlier than they expected, but he knew the Hawks wanted him, but was still surprised by the pick. But to see the reaction of the dad was phenomenal. He was like,
It was great.
I can't believe this happened, even though that's the reason we're here wearing suits and sitting in this building. I can't believe it happened.
Drafted?
It's amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah, this was the quote from Renzel last night after being picked by the Blackhawks. This is from NBC Sports Chicago. I couldn't believe it. I had maybe a little bit of a feeling that Chicago was the team that had the most interest in me, but I never knew for sure. I was kind of feeling they were going to take a defenseman, but for them to pull the trigger on me, I'm very fortunate. And like we've pretty much said throughout yesterday and today so far, the Blackhawks had their players they wanted. It was very clear they had their type of player they wanted, and they had their specific players they wanted because they trade into a position to get Kevin Korchinski. They trade into a position to get Frank Nazar. They trade into a position to get Sam Renzel. They trade out of the third round for a future third round pick earlier today. Because to me, that basically says we got the guys we wanted at these positions. Let's think about next year for a little bit before we dive into our project picks later in the rounds.
Yep.
So I love seeing the Blackhawks have a plan, a set plan.
We're not
Love
used to
seeing
it,
that.
and it's going to take a little. We got I think some of us still have some Stockholm syndrome to the.
It's retraining the brain.
Let's
for
throw
sure.
some spaghetti against the wall and see which ones stick. Strategy, excuse me, but we have a general manager that has a vision, and he's put the first steps of enacting that vision and making it a reality. And that's, as I've said 100 times over the last 86 hours we've been on live. That's all you want out of your GM. And it's up to him to make the right decisions, and then it's up to the organization to develop these kids and get them here and producing.
Right.
And we just have to allow that process to take form and see if it works out. But the plan is intact, and so far, I'm a big fan of it.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, all we have to go on right now, and this is really any draft, unless you're getting a McDavid generational type player. Like, we look at Capo Caco, who is can't miss, and Alexis Lafreniere. I can never say his name right, but you know what I'm talking about, the Rangers guy. They've not become the superstars everybody thought they were going to. They still might.
Heischer and Jack Hughes, both guys, you could be like, oh, I don't know if they should have taken them at number 1 overall.
Right.
And
It takes time to really fill out a draft. So all we can do, it might sound like we're trying to spin this in a positive way, but for what we know, it is positive because, like we've said, there's a plan, there's a vision. You see what they're doing. You're looking at the guys they're drafting. You're hearing what they're saying, and it makes all the sense in the world. Now it's a matter of, can they develop them? Did they choose the right guys? And honestly, no one really knows the answer to that.
We won't know for a few years.
All the draft analysts seem to like it. A lot of Bs. I know Corey Pronman gave him a B+. Usually, when the Hawks draft ends, it's like, F-. What the hell are they doing? Like, year after year, draft analysts just pan the Blackhawks draft picks over and over again.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
How many of them are in Chicago now?
We were talking about some of the draft history in the recent years and going through some of the classes.
There were a few years they shouldn't have even shown up. They wasted airfare
to
get there.
You look at some of these classes, and it's like
Miles.
one player has reached the NHL level, and it's like a handful of games. Like 2015, outside of Dennis Gilbert's 25 games in the NHL, which may be the only 25 he ever plays, no one else has done anything. 2014, outside of Nick Schmaltz, who the majority of his career has now been away from Chicago, no one besides Dylan Sekura's handful of games. I mean, it's just you can't have an entire class with
nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
You
can't have that,
let alone multiple
entire classes
in
back-to-back
years.
Yeah.
You can't do it. That's why we're at where we're not. That's why they could not sustain a level of competition of winning. That's why they're not the Penguins or the Bruins, who can draft and develop young talent. That's why they can still have Patrice Bergerons and Sidney Crosbys and give Chris Letang a contract till he's 109 years old. That's why they're able to do that, because they could fill in with cheap young talent that produces at the NHL level.
Also, they don't sign them to the maximum contract with
Right.
full no movement clauses
So that man,
and
that-
max term.
Yeah, but that
Exactly.
Letang deal, that
is rough.
That's going to be brutal in 2 or 3 years.
I couldn't believe that. That is so un-Penguins.
Yeah. Well,
And now what? Like, is Malkin gonna walk? Are they like?
Seems
Like,
like
if you're
it.
betting on one of those two to have a better next 6 years, aren't you betting on Malkin?
probably.
I mean, he's had some injury problems.
Yeah, but I
Both
mean,
have
Letang
had,
is
but-
and a
always
lot
hurts.
Yeah,
It's like they take
it's,
him out
it's
of the
two
back
players
tank
with a
before every
lot
game.
of miles
Sorry,
and,
and
many
Letang,
injuries.
And Letang has had a lot of concussion problems.
And you look at
always
the-
worry about guys like that. It's just one more hit to the head of the way before see ya.
Yeah, and you look at the way they play. Sure, Malkin is a more physical, power forward, but his game isn't so speed reliant as Chris Letang's is.
Right.
And that, even if Letang is healthy, as he approaches his late 30s, he's going to lose a step or two. And we saw what happened to Duncan Keith when he lost a step or two.
right.
That is not the same guy.
It is a
We'll save that for a
off
Throwback
of.
Thursday Duncan
Yeah.
Keith episode. All right, we're not going to give you the full breakdown of every pick. We went through the first rounders. We just don't have time.
Well, so they
Maybe we could just do another 4-hour podcast.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. So they get 3 picks in the first round, 2 defensemen, 1 forward. The next 8 of their next 10 picks are all forwards, and they're all different versions of themselves.
Right.
Yep. we have identified the Kyle Davidson type.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a type.
Polish.
Some guys like blondes, some guys like redheads. Kyle Davidson's likes fast guys.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
I just got drafted by the Blackhawks.
I'm sorry. All of their picks today were forwards.
Yes.
Yeah?
All of them were forwards.
Yes.
So you see it there on your screen. Down the line, Paul Ludwinski, Ryan Green, Gavin Hayes, Samuel Savoy, Aiden Thompson, Dominic James, Nils Juntorp,
Sure.
and Rico Tohila. So
Jay got his Finnish player. He
most
wanted
of
one
these,
Finn.
yeah,
They made you wait.
They went all North American until their last 2 picks there. Nils Juntorp is from Sweden, and Tohila is from Finland, and they're all different versions of decent size, fast, good compete level, a little bit of an all-around game. The one I go back here to the analysis here from NBC Sports Chicago. They talked with the director of scouting, Mike Donahue. This was about Samuel Savoy. It says Samuel is just a ball of energy, a thick, big motor. Played
boy.
some wing this year, but he also got bumped into the middle. Total character. If you can think like a Yanni Gourde type player, just speed, relentless speed, just gets after it. That is an interesting player. I think it's a little small wrecking ball of a player that's
Can never have too many Andrew Shaws.
Yeah, you get a player like that in the third round,
One
not too
scouting
bad.
report said to him, it said, make your decision or meet your doom.
Before we bring in our guest, Colby Cohen, one more question from the chat. Shocky Boys, not Chonky Boys, says,
Boy.
guys, is there a specific later pick that you're more optimistic about than others? I'm really interested in Ryan Green. I just from what I've read about him, seems like an interesting player, put up big numbers. It's a bit of a project again, a 6'2", 179, so real lanky, but that will fill out as he gets older. You can never have too many big centermen, so that's the one for me. What about you guys?
I like the Green pick. That was a guy I had on my radar heading into the draft for one of those second or third round picks. I kind of like the Aiden Thompson pick in the third round. He's a 20-year-old, so he's already got some experience. He's a kid that can jump right into the Rockford Ice Hogs lineup this coming year. One of the fastest skaters in the USHL, and had a big offensive. He had 58 assists in 57 games, so he's fast, a little older. I think that's a guy that, at least at the professional level, not NHL, but professional level, can be a contributor right away.
I like Samuel Savoy. Thick,
All right.
big motor. Sign me up. Let's go.
do it. All right, tell people about Owen, then we're going to get to Colby Cohen, and we'll ask him that same question on the other side of this advertising message.
If you are looking to fuel yourself the right way, to fuel yourself and your own big thick motor, The right thing to do is get yourself some Owen, spelled OWYN, stands for only what you need. It is a 100% plant-based protein shake that gives you the nutrition that works just as hard as you do. All of Owen's products are free of artificial ingredients. They are allergen-friendly. They don't contain any gluten or dairy. They are easily digestible. You may have heard about Owen from Chicago Bears quarterback Justin Fields, who also follows a plant-based diet. Right now, Owen and CHGO are partnering up to give you an awesome offer. You can get 20% off of your first purchase at liveowen.com when you use the code CHGO20. I've tried it myself as I am getting back into working out. It is great. I definitely am feeling the benefits of the recovery from the workouts. I try and cut out gluten and dairy as much as possible, so it's a perfect product for me. So join Justin Fields and myself, one and the same when it comes to working out, and try Owen, again, OWYN, only what you need.
All right, let's bring in our guest, Colby Cohen, Blackhawks TV analyst, Terrier hockey alumni, BU Terrier. For those that don't know, and you should know, Colby covers a lot of college hockey as well. That's why he was our A1 guest to bring on today. We'll ask you, of these draft picks, Colby, any of these guys really have you excited?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, first of all, I like the mix. You know, when you look at this draft, I think there's a healthy mix. But I could hear you guys. I was kind of in the waiting area for joining you guys.
The green room, we call it.
The green room. Okay, I like it. The green room. But I'm with you guys on Green. You know, I think I'm excited about him. I mean, he's going to BU, which makes it a target for me.
Is that a good program to go to?
So the minute we drafted him, I called both their coaches. Actually, I called Jay Pandolfo. I called Joe Pereira. Their associate head coach was one of my roommates at BU, and they're excited about him. You look at this guy and you look at his size. He's going to fill out. I mean, by the time he leaves BU, he'll be 20 pounds heavier. And he's big and he's long. And from hearing from those coaches, they told me he already skates like a pro, and he plays at a professional pace. And those are things that, come naturally to him. So I think that this is a guy who excites me. I mean, I think the high draft choices, obviously in that first round, I think all three of them for me are exciting. But as a mid-round pick, I'm excited about Green. You get these guys who are big and they're already 180 pounds at 18 years old, and then they're going to go really learn how to work out. I mean, I spent time in the national development team where they put a big emphasis on training and working out. And then I also, my U18 year, had left that program and went to play in Lincoln. And, the training is not on par in the USHL necessarily off the ice as it is at college or the NTDP. So a guy like Green is going to go and be around world-class strength and conditioning coaches and really fill out and learn from Jay Pandolfo how to play in the NHL. And to me, that's pretty exciting.
One thing we saw from this year's draft class from the Blackhawks that I think has been something that they haven't really done a ton of in recent years, but this year definitely is looking at getting players that are going to be going back to junior or going into college programs. Obviously the importance of having patience and waiting for these prospects to pan out. That's going to be something that we'll need to adapt to as Blackhawks fans, not really having the expectation that anyone's going to jump in right away and be a player right away out of this draft class at the NHL level. But other than your favorite Ryan Green, who I think the three of us were really excited when the Blackhawks were able to select Frank Nazar, who is going to the University of Michigan. What's your read on him coming out of the U.S. development program?
Yeah, I mean, that's another exciting player. And again, I actually asked the BU coaches about him as well because, these guys recruit, they watch the NTDP, they've seen him play tons and tons of times. And you look at the way that he plays and his speed. I actually got to watch him play for the U18s because I had that on, that was on NHL Network. So I got to physically watch him play in that tournament. And his speed was glaring. And, that's a tournament of the best at that age. And when you have a kid who can stand out on that team amongst other, top end players, as we saw, he's a guy to be excited about. And I like that he's going to Michigan. He's going to be around other players that are going to push him every day. He's going to be, going against Hughes and some other, Samiskevich and some of these other first round draft picks. He's going to play for Mel Pearson, a guy who has coached, I can't name the number, but he's probably coached somewhere between, 25 and 50 first round picks throughout his college time, albeit as an assistant with Michigan and now as the head coach with Michigan. So, you're just putting him in a good atmosphere where he's already comfortable in the city of Ann Arbor. Well, I know USA actually isn't in Ann Arbor now, so I stand corrected. It used to be in Ann Arbor. Now it's right down the road in Plymouth. But to me, it's a great fit. It's a need. You can never have too many good centers. You see the teams that are winning in the playoffs. They're doing it with great centers. They're doing it with guys who can skate. Braden Point, I've seen his name pop up a couple of times. So, I mean, that was a good pick. I liked how aggressive they were to jump in. And look, talking to Colin Frazier, who's one of the Blackhawks Western scouts, about the 7th overall pick, that's another guy who, is it Korchinski or Korchinski?
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys got
Korchinski, yeah.
So you got the pronunciation on that, but I mean, Shea Theodore is the guy that I keep hearing him compared to, and I know Mike Donaghy talked about that a little bit, but Fraz, who you guys well know from playing here, he did some TV work with us this year and some radio work with us this year, so I got to know him and spend time with him on the road and hear about how he scouts players and what he's looking at, and he saw him play a lot. I mean, he saw it. I don't even know how many times I saw him. It was that many. And this is a guy Kyle saw, Mike Donaghy saw. So this is a consensus pick for the Blackhawks because so many of our high-level and trusted people got to watch him play. And, I remember doing a Shea Theodore playoff game, Vegas' first ever playoff game in the NHL, their first year. I was doing radio for Westwood One, and that was the first time I went, wow, this Shea Theodore guy is a special player. So when I start to hear comparisons to Shea Theodore, I mean, that's exciting. I mean, these defensemen that can skate the puck up and down the ice and completely change the pace of a hockey game, I like that. But you guys mentioned this before I came on. These are all players that, you're not going to see them in Blackhawks uniforms in regular season games probably for 3 years out. I mean, you just aren't. I mean, these are big guys. They're light. Rinzel's the same thing. I mean, I know a lot of people were like a little curious at that pick, but again, like when you draft a guy in the first round, that means everybody has seen him. Everybody. That means your head scout, your GM, your assistant GM, your player personnel. I mean, that means everybody saw this guy. And you look what he did in the USHL in a brief period of time. He put up good numbers coming out of that that Minnesota high school. He's going to go play in Waterloo. Then he's going to go play at Minnesota. And, Paul Martin is now the defensive coach for the Minnesota Golden Gophers. So he's going to go learn how to become a pro while playing at Minnesota with Paul Martin on the bench. Again, like I like the pick. He's 6'3" or 4 potentially, and he's going to end up coming to Chicago at 210 pounds in 3 or 4 years. So, look, they're all pretty excitable picks, but in 12 months, when we see how these guys have done in their first year in college, their next year in junior, like I think that's when we'll really start to know like how far these guys are off. When we get to watch them go through a training camp, go through a couple development camps. But, overall, guys, like those first 5 picks, Aiden Thompson included, who's going to go play for David Carl, who's, going to be an NHL head coach if he pleases. That's another one. Like I liked it. I did. I mean, we'll see, like I said, in 12 months, 18 months, but I liked where they went and the directions that they went with these different players.
Based on what you know, who do you think is the surest thing of the picks the Hawks made?
You know what, guys? I'm not going to sit here and even lie to you guys because I haven't seen enough of these players.
Sure,
I got to see Nizar play in the U18s, but only I saw him play 3 games. So I can't make my opinion based on what I read on the internet and watching him play 3 games. So, you'd like to think your 7th overall pick is a sure thing, and he's going to get every opportunity to succeed. And I think the same goes with Nazar too. Like when you have draft picks in that top 15, it matters to a GM that their player makes it. And so they're going to put the resources behind him and the time behind him. But I just, guys, I'm not a scout. And I don't watch the OHL, the WHL. Like, I don't see those games. So I know what I've read, but I don't base my opinion on what I've read. I'm looking forward to being at development camp in a couple of days. I'm actually going to be Chris Vossers and I will be broadcasting one of the games at development camp, I think on the 15th, I believe. So I'll get a little bit of a better idea after seeing these guys at development camp, what my true feelings are. And then I'm happy to give you guys a little more on that. But I don't want to come on here and base everything that I'm saying off of what I read on the internet, because I think that's a pretty dangerous game to play.
No, I appreciate that for sure. Well, with that in mind, let's turn the focus now to the NHL team. And I know you know these guys a little bit just from being around the team, and you've got to wonder if you're a Jonathan Toews or a Patrick Kane or a Seth Jones or a Connor Murphy, how you're feeling today, looking at what the next year or two is going to look like. How do you think those guys are taking it, and how do you think it'll shake out come the beginning of the season next year?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think it's jarring. I think right now it's probably pretty emotional for guys like Kaner and Toews and Murph and really any of the players, Seth Jones. I mean, you could put any of those guys in that bubble, and it's a jarring thing to watch, your teammates get traded, whether it's a good trade or not. It's tough. These are guys you go to dinner with, you live with them, you might be roommates with them, your wives are friends. I mean, it's no joke. And so I think those guys are all probably feeling really emotional. I just think back to trade deadlines, whether I was in the American League or not, we had high draft choices, prospects, and watching guys get shipped out of the dressing room. Like, that's just never an easy thing because these are your friends. So I'm sure Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews especially are probably, even though they were told this was coming to some extent, it's real now. And I think they probably have to, talk to their team, their camp, their agent, their families, and they've got some decisions to make on if they really, truly want to be a part of this. But I will say this, like, to truly rebuild when you don't have any assets and you don't have a lot of assets and you don't have a lot of prospects, you've got to make uncomfortable decisions. And I think that players do understand the business side of it. And I think a guy like Seth Jones is going to have to now say, okay, my job is to show up every day and set a great example and be a great pro and play at 100% effort and usher along this next group and try to do what I can to help these players in training camp, in preseason, through the first parts of the year, because at the end of the day, you're under contract, right? And whether you ask to be traded or not, you still might not get traded, even if you ask for one. Like, you have a contract. I mean, you guys probably saw what Billy Guerin said about Cam Talbot today. I don't care what it. And the funny thing is that's my agent. Those guys, George Bezos and Jordan Newman, those are my guys, and so I'm laughing reading that. But listen, Billy G's right. You're under contract, and so you got to be a good pro. You got to show up, and you got to do your job, and take care of yourself. Take care of doing the right things, being a good example, and that's what a lot of these next couple seasons are going to be about. So I do think we're going to see more turnover. I'd be shocked if we don't. I think we all are smart enough to see the writing on the wall for some of those things. But ultimately, right now, those guys are Blackhawks. And while I'm sure they're definitely feeling the emotions of it, they're under contract. And I know those guys, if they're in training camp come October, September, whenever training camp officially opens, September, they're going to be good pros and they're going to show up and they're going to do their job. And that's ultimately what you have to do when you're a professional, really, at anything.
Going quickly back to the draft class, we talked about Ryan Green going to BU, Nazar going to Michigan, Rinzel going to Minnesota. They're not only just going to college, but they're going to some of the top programs in the nation, hockey player factories for years. Is there an advantage, you being a big college guy, played college, cover the game, is there an advantage for kids like this for long-term development to go play in the NCAA level as opposed to a junior level, OHL, WHL? Does maybe that shorter schedule where there's more time to focus on individual practice and workouts, is that an advantage than playing more games in the OHL? And is that a key for the Hawks?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when there's certain players where it doesn't matter. Like if Patrick Kane went to Patrick Kane was committed to go to BU. If he would have gone to BU for a year, he'd still be a Hall of Famer with 3 cups and everything else. So it wouldn't have mattered, right? But Kaner's the exception to the rule. You look at the guys that they drafted, and there is a theme. They're tall. Well, they're not all tall, but they're all, pretty narrow players, right? They're all guys that need to be in the weight room, and they need that off-ice portion of it. And I think college allows that because you said there's 35 to 45 games. There's a ton of practice time. There's a ton of gym time. I mean, we were lifting 2 and 3 days a week at BU. And on Sundays we'd be in there doing conditioning. If you didn't, it's very much, especially for a defenseman, I think it's a great place. Like for Rinzel, who's a big lanky guy who probably hasn't grown into himself at all. I mean, I remember James Van Riemsdyk as a good example. We were the same draft class. We played together at the national team, and him and I probably were like 180. We left the U.S. program at, probably like 185. We probably both went in there at 6'3", 6'4", 150. We left the national team at 185. And then, I left BU at 215. He left UNH at 210. So it gives you that time to, fill out because you're still on the ice every day. You're still playing games. You're playing against 25-year-old men. So you're playing against bigger guys. When you see some of these rosters, they have men on their team. There are no boys, at that level. So I'm a big proponent of the NCAA route, but I'm biased. I didn't play in the OHL. I do think for some players, it really doesn't matter. They're just so good. And I think, look, the OHL, the WHL, the Q, they've proven themselves to be a league that sends players to the NHL. So you certainly can't deny that. You look at the Swedish league, the Finnish players, some of these guys. Again, I think there's different routes that are all positive, but ultimately, yes, I totally agree with you, especially looking at the guys we picked, especially those college players. I think 2 and 3 years for each of these players is going to be really important. And again, you're playing that type of competitive hockey. You look at a guy like Vlasic, where they said, look, coming back, you're not going to get better. You need to go to the next level, whether it's going to be Rockford or Chicago. We don't know. But their coaches, Jay Pandolfo said to Vlasic, you're ready. It's time for you to take the next step. He's played 3 years. And then you guys saw him at the end of the year. He didn't, look like he was totally out of place. He had his moments, but he certainly looked like a guy who could play in the NHL. So I like it. I'm a proponent of it. Minnesota, Bob Motzko, Paul Martin, David Carl at Denver, Boston University. You've got, Jay Pandolfo, Joe Pereira. They just stole the skills coach from the Boston Bruins, Kim Branifold, who's, is supposedly unbelievable with skating and skills. So, you got to like that kind of stuff.
Colby, this has been awesome, man. We appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for the flexibility, too, as we kind of had no idea how fast the other rounds were going to go. So thanks for being available. We appreciate it. And
I want to say one more thing to you guys.
All right.
Because I follow all you guys on social media, as you know, and I'm looking at it. No, it's not a no God. But all I'm going to do is I'm going to challenge you guys to, not overreact. Because there's going to be more stuff that happens. And when we saw that DeBrincat trade, everybody lost it, right? I mean, everybody. And listen, understandably so. It's emotional to lose a guy like that. We're all hearing we're going to get 10 first-round picks for him, right? But then you start digging in. You start looking at the players who have been moving. You see the salaries that are moving. You see the players that are getting targeted, and you're like, whoa, DeBrincat's salary is a little bit tough, but then they turn around, they clear a little bit of cap space. Unfortunately, in the same 24 hours, Duncan decides he's going to retire. So there goes your cap space from DeBrincat. But, in my opinion, one of the bigger reasons that they looked at that trade is to clear money so they can take bad contracts so they could get more first-round picks and more assets. And then they turn around, and I thought the deal for Kirby was to me like one of the more impressive deals that they got and that they made. I know that Jeff Gorton really liked Kirby and was all over Kirby for the last month, making phone calls, asking about him and stuff like that. So I do feel that there's a plan. And I do feel like even for me, when I saw the DeBrincat trade, my eyebrows went up just like you guys. But my I have the devil and then the angel is like, okay, just calm down. Like, let's see what happens next. Let's see if there's a plan. And I know you guys have been living this for longer than me, and you guys have kind of been burned by this whole we have a plan thing.
What?
I'm around, and I do feel like there's a plan. I really do feel like there's a plan. I may not agree with it all. You guys certainly don't have to or won't, but I do feel like there's a plan. And as media members, at least for me, that's all I can ask for. Give me a plan that I can communicate and that you're going to stick to and explain. And so that's all I'm saying is just let's give the guy a chance. Let's see what the plan is.
No, you know what? We've been preaching that too. And I think the initial shock of the DeBrincat thing, especially with what we'd been hearing leading up to it, was a bit like, wait a minute. I thought it was 2 high prospects and 2 firsts and all this stuff. And it didn't work out that way. But I was very calm on Twitter. I just said, to me, this is not enough. We'll talk about it at 6.
Which is totally fair. Totally fair.
My knee-jerk reaction, was that was a loss, not getting enough. But by the end of the draft and as everything played out, I was like, okay, overall, big picture, this was a very good night for Kyle Davidson.
Yeah, it's a
good night for this organization.
And I felt that with you guys too. When I looked at the bigger picture, I went, okay, I see what we're doing here, and I was impressed with some of the moves. And the other thing that I really appreciated about today's draft, or the last 2 days, that was a collaborative draft. Yeah. Okay, those players that they took from overseas, Mike Donaghy said, I've never seen those guys. That means he's relying on professional scouts to make decisions that he trusts. And I'm not sure that was happening here previously, as it's been said.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, there's a team effort. There's a plan. There's a vision for the future. Let's let it play out. It's the first time we've had this here in a long time. So I know we're not used to it. It's a little weird to have a regime that actually is thinking more beyond this season. But it's all good. Like, as far as I'm concerned, yes, some of the moves sting a little bit. Overall, I chalk this one in the win column for Kyle Davidson's first draft.
No doubt. Mm-hmm. All right, man.
Cool. All right,
we'll see you
talk
next
to you
week.
Soon. Sorry for not leaving.
Problem.
I know you guys are trying to kick me out already, but
no,
I'm
that's
like,
all right.
We'll
never.
We'll have lots of time to chat at development camp this week. We're going to be out there the whole week. It's going to be a lot of fun.
All right, guys. You guys have a good rest of your show. Thanks for having me on.
All right, Colby. Take care, man. Thanks
again.
All right, see you guys.
Make sure you follow Colby on Twitter at Colby Cohen 36. Before we wrap up, a ton of new names in the chat, by the way.
Yes.
Jacob, Fernando watching from Brazil. Chuckle Muckle is here all the time. We don't need to talk about him. Kalen. I think Mr. Windy was in maybe the last 2 days or so. Tons of new names joining us. I think over the last, 24 hours or so now, we've had
30
a ton of new people jumping in.
Love
and
it.
if you're enjoying what you're seeing and you're on YouTube, hammer that like button. It really helps us out. It takes you half of a second to hit that like button. Do it, hit it, do that. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you go on Spotify or Apple Pods or Pocket Cast, wherever you listen. Subscribe. That's huge. Turn on those notifications on YouTube and on your podcast app so you know when new episodes drop. We're here 5 days a week. And like Greg said, we are going to be at Prospects Camp 4 of the 5 days next week. We're also going to be live as soon as free agency opens on Wednesday. It's only going to keep going from here. Then it will slow down big time. And then the preseason will happen, and it will be wonderful. So we appreciate your support. Huge thank you to Lawrence, who has been our producer through all of our live draft coverage and our post-draft show. We all look very tired. We all need to go home. We all need to get some sleep and have a tremendous weekend, and we hope you do too. Thanks for the continued support. Thanks to all the new people, and we hope you stick around. Reminder, one final time, we're presented by PointsBet. Use that promo code CHGO when you sign up, and you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. For Greg Boysen and Mario Tirabassi, I'm Jay Zawaski. We'll talk to you Monday on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.